Ever overheard someone talking about like the latest COVID variant and just felt completely lost? Like what even IS KP.3.1.1 and should I be worried? Should I canceling my brunch plans?
Yeah.
It's a lot. So today we're going deep on those honestly kind of cryptic COVID variant names.
Yeah.
We're going to decode what they mean, why even a single mutation matters, and what this all means for, well, you.
It's almost like trying to follow a soap opera, where everyone has the same last name.
Okay, I see that.
Except instead of dramatic reveals, we're talking about viruses.
And the stakes are way higher than Who Stole the Family Fortune.
Way higher, yeah.
Okay, so let's start with those names. Imagine you're like eavesdropping at a coffee shop. Okay. You hear someone say, heard KP.3.1.1 is taking over. I mean, that sounds like a robot uprising, not a virus.
Right, it does. But there is, believe it or not, a method to the madness.
Okay, good.
It's called the Pango Lineage Designation System. Basically, it's a way to track the virus's, family tree.
Family tree, okay.
Yeah. Think of the letters and numbers as shorthand for different branches and offshoots.
So KP.2.3.1.1 isn't some, random code. It's actually telling us where this variant fits in the grand scheme of, COVID evolution.
Exactly. And it's actually designed to continue indefinitely.
Oh, wow.
So you see, once a lineage gets 3 sublineage designations, like 1.1.1, it rolls over to the next letter.
Okay.
That's why JN.1, as different as it sounds, actually descended from the infamous BA.2 variant.
Wait, so even if the letters change, they might be, way more closely related than we think. That's wild. Yeah. But why even bother? Why do we care? What's the point of knowing, the viral family drama?
Well, understanding these lineages, that's key to tracking the virus's spread, predicting its impact, and even developing those effective vaccines.
Right.
It's like, they say, know your enemy.
Right.
The more intel, the better.
Makes sense. Now, let's talk about those family squabbles.
Okay.
We've got these different branches like KP.2 and KP.3, both coming from the same parent, JN.1.1. But what's the real world difference between these, siblings? It's just they each have a unique mutation. Is that right?
You got it. And those single mutations, though they seem small on the surface, can have a huge impact.
Okay.
Think of it this way. You swap out one ingredient in a recipe, and suddenly, your delicious cookies taste like burnt toast.
Ugh, been there. Okay, so one ingredient, or in this case, one mutation, can change the whole game.
Yes.
Tell us about these game changers. All right, so we've got these, siblings, right? KP.2 and KP.3, each with their own signature mutation. What makes these mutations so important? Is it just about how contagious the virus is?
Well, contagiousness is definitely a factor, yeah. But, these mutations also affect how well our bodies can fight back.
Okay.
Especially those defenses we've built up from, vaccines or even previous infections.
You mean our immune systems. But before we even get into all that, maybe a little refresher on how our bodies even tackle viruses in the first place.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's easy to get lost in the world of mutations without appreciating the incredible, really, defense system our bodies already have in place.
Right.
So let's talk for a second about humoral immunity.
Humoral immunity. See, that already sounds kind of intimidating.
Yeah, it might sound complex, but it's all about antibodies, really.
Yeah, okay.
Think of antibodies like tiny little Y-shaped proteins, patrolling your bloodstream, constantly on the lookout for invaders, like viruses.
Okay, so we've got these, microscopic bouncers on patrol.
Right.
What makes antibodies so good at their jobs? What do they do?
Well, antibodies are our immune systems, personalized attack plan, right? Each antibody is specifically designed to recognize and latch onto a particular virus.
Okay.
Kind of like a key fitting into a lock almost. You can think of it like Velcro, right?
Okay.
The antibody sticks to the virus and it prevents it from doing its job.
So it latches on and then it disables the virus from, doing its thing.
Exactly.
Got it.
Okay.
But how does this relate to vaccines?
Okay, so vaccines, they work by showing your immune system a preview of the virus, or at least its most recognizable parts without actually getting you sick.
Okay.
This preview is like a wanted poster, prompting your body to produce those antibodies that are primed and ready to fight off the real deal, if you ever encounter it.
So it's our bodies have a security system in place.
Exactly.
And vaccines are us giving that system the picture of the bad guy to watch out for.
Exactly. But now imagine the virus tries to, disguise itself. That's where these mutations come in.
You mean put on a fake mustache or something?
Precisely. Even a tiny change from a mutation can make it harder for those like pre-programmed antibodies to recognize and latch onto the virus.
Oh,
And then suddenly our security system isn't as effective.
okay. That makes sense. So back to those siblings we were talking about, KP.2, KP.3.
Right.
They both came from the same parent, but had those single unique mutations. How much of a difference did those single mutations make?
Well, let's take JN.1, for example.
Yeah.
It came from BA.2.86.1, but it had this one key mutation, L455S.
Yep.
And studies found that this single mutation reduced the effectiveness of neutralizing antibodies by over 70%.
Wow, 70. That's huge. One tiny change can really throw a wrench in things.
Exactly. It's a prime example of why we can't judge a variant by, its mutation count alone. It's
Right.
about the impact, not just the quantity.
Okay.
And speaking of impactful mutations, KP.3.1.1 has a rather interesting one. It's not just a substitution, it's a deletion.
A deletion, you mean like a chunk of the genetic code is just gone?
Exactly. It's called DELIS31, short for deletion at position 31 in the spike protein.
Okay, I need a visual here.
Yeah.
What happens when you, delete part of the spike protein?
Okay, so picture the spike protein as like a key, okay,
Ah.
with different grooves and ridges.
Okay.
And antibodies have, specific ways of binding to those grooves, right?
Right.
Well, the DELIS31 mutation essentially reshapes those grooves,
Okay.
making it much harder for certain antibodies to latch on.
So it's like changing the lock on a door,
Right.
and suddenly your old keys, the antibodies, don't fit as well.
A perfect analogy. And this is especially true for what we call class 1 antibodies, which are key players in our immune response, particularly for those who've been vaccinated.
So this tiny deletion is like throwing a wrench into a key part of our defenses.
Yep.
Especially for those who've gotten the jab. That's a little unnerving, to be honest.
It's definitely something to, keep an eye on. And it raises important questions about how well our current vaccines, which are based on earlier variants, will hold up against these newer, more evolved strains.
Okay, that's kind of what I was thinking. So what does this all mean for us? Are we back to square one with every new variant that pops up? So where does this leave us? It feels like every time we turn around, there's a new variant with a new trick up its sleeve. Should we be hitting the panic button?
Not exactly. I mean, it's true that this virus is, constantly evolving, and some changes are, of course, more concerning than others, but we're not, starting from scratch with every new variant, right?
Okay, that's reassuring. But you mentioned how well our current vaccines, hold up. The latest one is based on KP.2, right? Does that mean it covers us for KP.3.1.1 and its, pesky deletion?
That is the million-dollar question. The good news is that the KP.2 vaccine formula does include 2 mutations present in KP.3.1.1.
Okay.
Those of F456L and V1104L. However, and this is crucial, it does not include the DELIS31 deletion.
Ah, there it is again. That tiny deletion really stirring up some trouble. So does that mean the KP.2 vaccine is, useless against KP.3.1.1?
Well, it's not that black and white. Remember, vaccines don't just, disappear when a new variant emerges, right? They prime our immune systems. They give us a head start.
Right.
Think of it like this. Even if the virus changes its disguise a bit, our immune system still has that mugshot, right? And it can recognize that it's a bad guy.
Okay, so our defenses aren't totally blindsided.
Right.
But how effective is that head start, especially with that deletion messing with our, class 1 antibodies?
That, my friend, is what scientists are working hard to figure out right now. It's a complex puzzle, and there's still a lot we don't know about how these, specific mutations actually impact vaccine effectiveness in the real world.
So more data, which, let's be honest, is the answer to a lot of questions these days.
Right.
But it is reassuring to know that those brilliant minds are on the case. This whole deep dive has been, honestly, kind of a whirlwind of information. Any final thoughts for our listeners before we wrap things up?
Here's something to, chew on. As this virus continues to evolve, will just tweaking those existing vaccines be enough? Or will we need a more, fundamental shift in our approach to vaccine design, perhaps focusing on more stable parts of the virus that aren't so prone to mutations?
Now, that is a thought-provoking question. It really feels like you said before, this whole world of viruses is like a soap opera, always full of twists and turns. For our listeners, if you're curious about which variants are making waves in your area, be sure to check out the link to Mike Honey's visualization tool in our show notes. It's like a weather map, but for viruses. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay healthy.